Today's episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast is brought to you by TCG Player, your source for all your trading card game needs. Please consider using our link in the description for your next purchase, as it helps support the continued refinement of our show. This episode is also made possible through the gracious support of our Patreon members. If you wish to join this esteemed group, simply visit patreon.com/The Mind Sculptors and become part of the SCULPTY family today. And of course, if you prefer a simpler gesture, we invite you to subscribe, leave a like and comment on YouTube, or leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as a most fitting offering to the ever-watchful algorithm Jesus.
So yesterday was the Super Bowl, but we're recording this in the past, and you're watching this in the future. Ian, what is your prediction on the Super Bowl? Who do you think wins?
Go fucking Birds. I'm a Philly resident. What do you mean, dog?
I did want to call you on that, because last week you said that you were a Philly native, and I was like, you're a Boston native, my friend.
Yeah.
You are a Philly resident.
Yeah. I'm a transplant.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm practicing my wooder.
Fucking stolen valor over here.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
go Birds. Anyways, I'm calling.
I think it's three-peat. I think it's the three-peat. I think Chiefs got this one.
Boring.
I know. Listen, I'm not saying it's fun or interesting. I'm just saying I think that's probably what's going to happen. So if you're from the future, which is the present for you, let us know if we were right or wrong. So Did the Birds win or did the Chiefs win?
The funny thing is I'm flying out to Portland this weekend for an SCG, and specifically very much avoiding the riots that do become my city when the Super Bowl happens.
Win or lose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Philly is crazy.
Yeah, Philly fans are built different, one might say. You know, all I gotta say, you know, there's all that stuff there. Honestly, the cold open sports stuff I've been really enjoying. I don't know if you saw it or not, but did you see the Luka Doncic trade that happened to the Mavs? With the Mavs? Okay, so welcome to the Mind Sculptors. I'm Cal.
I'm Ian.
Okay, so what happened was kind of out of nowhere, the Mavs star player Luka Doncic, who is 25, he has not even hit his prime in the league yet, was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for like a can of Coke. And if you look at the full trade, there was like a bunch of different stuff that happened in it. But to put this in Magic the Gathering terms, I saw somebody, I forget who was that said this on Blue Sky, is this would be the comparison of you were playing in a modern tournament and you had all duels or all like shock lands in your deck. And the store owner came in and said, hey, I'm going to replace all of those with OG dual lands. Have fun. That's the equivalent of what happened in the NBA this week. It's fucking wild. It is maybe the worst trade to ever happen.
Basketball is my least favorite observing sport, so I'm fully lost.
Luka Doncic is also like my second favorite player, right behind LeBron James. So now both my favorite players play for the same team. So
very fun.
Good times for me. With that being said, we are here to talk about Too Magic, Too Furious.
If you catch my drift.
Yeah. You know, we're here talking about Aetherdrift, and we're going to be looking at the set. And let's just get into it. We've got some commanders we're going to talk about right away, and let's just get this shit out of the way because everybody's been talking about this card. I was excited about this card initially, and I brewed it for a little bit, and then we kept brewing it, and now I fucking hate this card. Brewing it's been an absolute nightmare.
I agree.
This is Hashan Scarab's Fist. This is a 1/3 zombie wizard that costs a white and a black, And it says whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 generic and a blue. If you do, create a tapped token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. So this is just, everybody saw this card get spoiled and went, you know what I mean? Like, it is just obviously a good card.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really nice about Hashan, and especially since my like first viewing of it, is like it is so like it actually takes a lot of skill to play this deck, right? Which is really fun for me because I was worried that it was just going to be like turn brain off, launch a Jin-Gitaxias turn, right? But like that actually gets you killed with this deck, which I think is really cool. I know like for my personal build, I've cut Lion's Eye Diamond. We'll see how I do this weekend. I'm going to be playing it. So, you know,
we were on the phone like late last night. Talking about this with Phoenix, where it was, we were just kind of kept going back and forth on like, exactly which
composition and like
which deck build works.
It does a lot of really cool stuff. It combos specifically if you have like a whenever something dies trigger or whenever a legend ETBs thing, it combos with Shroom the Hegemon if you have any sort of discard outlet. So like there's a lot of really cool combos with it. Obviously being able to cheat in big fatties for super cheap is easy. I will say this is no Kinnan, right? No. It does have Esper colors, which, you know, better in that aspect, but it definitely feels like, you know, you can't hybridize the two game plans of like ramp and or cheat and big fatties as much as you can with Kinnan, right? So
I saw some people calling it the like Tivit killer, and I was like, I don't think they're even remotely comparable decks.
And
like
to be
they
honest,
are.
I think Tivit is a much easier deck to play than Hashan,
100%.
and I guarantee Hashaton's numbers are going to be super volatile over the next couple months because in building this deck, I'm seeing that people like it is just not going to be as easy as people think it is.
No, it's not. I mean, in our brewing of this deck, I mean, we've run the gambit on this, right? Like you've built what I think is the most like reasonable build of all of them, because like, you know, I've had my approach to it has been very lean, very you know, like the way I play Magic, right?
Right.
And I don't know if I believe in that version of the deck or not. I don't know if I believe in any of the versions of this deck, believe it or not. I think it will be a commander that works, right? Like it will eventually get there. I think it's going to take a lot of time to figure out exactly how to build this in a functional way. Because I think there's a lot of traps that you can easily fall into with this card. And I agree with that. I think it's just it is obviously going to be good, but like I know for a fact it's going to be a minute before I feel comfortable putting it on like our power rankings, right? Like
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff with it. I think it's just, you know, it's a commander that is going to take a lot of effort and work to sort of 100%. Push it to its absolute limit. And you know, you're going to lose to it through the turbo version at one point because someone sent it and nobody had the interaction. But I don't think that at the end of the day, that's the version of this deck that's really going to be like bringing home the bacon. You know, I think a lot more of these, you know, more nuanced, more complicated, more layered versions of the deck that are going to actually be the premier versions of this archetype, you know?
Yeah, no, fully agree with you. Moving on over, staying in the same, you know, region of the color pie, we've got Mendicant Core Guidelight. This is a X3 artifact creature robot that costs a white and a blue. It says its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. It has the 2 new abilities from the set, which is start your engines and max speed. If you have no speed, it starts at 1. It increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. Your max speed is 4. And then its max speed ability is whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 generic. If you do, copy it. So, you know, there's a lot of get into the, I don't see this personally as for commander. This was one that you were like, yeah, I want to talk about this one. So what are you seeing in this? Because to me, this reads as remarkably slow, right?
Yeah, for sure it is. Like, this is not the most explosive commander in the world. The thing with max speed that you need to understand is, or specifically with the start your engines mechanic, is as soon as a thing with start your engines sees play as a state-based action, so completely uninteractable, you're immediately at speed 1, right? Mm-hmm. You do have the chance on the turn that you play the permanent with speed 1, right? Or start your engines, I should say. If you do damage to your opponent during that turn cycle, you can immediately get to speed 2 at that end step, right? So hypothetically,
or if they fetch a shock, right, or fetch a land, right?
It's only on your turn. Right?
Right.
So, yeah. So it is something that can be done, right? To immediately get this to speed 2 the turn you get this out, right? Which for a 2-drop, and this is one of the reasons why I like this as a commander, is for a 2-drop, it is very easily able to threaten, basically just getting it down and getting to speed 2. Mm-hmm. By the time you're at speed 3, into speed 4, right? That's like, hypothetically, you can get this guy down and attacking on turn 1 in certain circumstances, more realistically speaking, by turn 2, right? Is the hypothetical, right? Even if it's just like Esper Sentinel into this, connect with the open player, GG's, right? And by GG's, I mean max speed moving up, right? So by the time that you can start grinding with this, I mean, I don't think I really have to go out of my way to explain how good copying artifacts for a single mana is. And it really starts to become very oppressive. I think this is some sort of, in my opinion, like, I don't want to say like beat down specifically, but basically like artifact prison style deck would be the place where I see it the most effective, right? So you're slowing the game down, you're getting yourself the opportunities to end up in like speed 2, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
And you're trying to basically use the fact that one, your commander's pretty cheap, right? So you're turning on Fierce Guardianships, Mox Ambers, all of that stuff, right? So your artifact count's already pretty significantly high. And then by the time that you're getting into that mid-range space, you're doing things, I was going to say 2-1 rings, but that's not it. But you're playing pieces that are just, leveraging the fact that, for example, double Phyrexian Metamorphs for 4 generic and 2 life, right? Like things like that really start to allow you to snowball a mass amount of value. I don't have like an exact list composed for this yet, right? Yeah. But I do think it has potential, which is why I think it's really interesting, because I do think there are enough value artifacts that exist in the format where it wouldn't be too hard to be able to create some really crazy stuff, right? Like I can imagine crazy KCI loops and stuff like that with this commander, especially like double scrap trawlers, like very easy to just go infinite when you do nonsense like that, you know?
And I mean, it's aggressively costed too. So I think that's definitely something in its favor, right? Like anytime you have a 2-mana commander, and you definitely have a lot more legs than a lot of other 2-color decks, right? Because of the fact that you're just able to get out in front of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And especially with something like this, you need to be quick. So,
right. It also doesn't hurt that like blue-white is probably the best core right now for the format. Like as far as especially like card advantage is concerned, right? We got Esper, Mystic, Ristic, Smothering, One Ring, et cetera, right? Yeah. So Archivist, so like drawing cards in these colors is not hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Next on our list here, staying with the 2-drops, we've got Vin Wix, Verbose Host. This is a 0/4 homunculus that costs a generic and a blue, has start your engines, and you have no maximum hand size. Its max speed ability is if you would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. So this is an interesting looking at mono blue here.
Yeah.
Ian, these sorts of strategies in the past, people have tried them, haven't really had a whole lot of success with them. What are your thoughts on it?
I don't think this is like the best commander we're going to talk about today. I think it's just, it is kind of cute. And I
think we already talked about the best commander today, personally.
Yeah, for sure.
We've already talked about it. But
there's probably one more that's close, but I think this commander specifically is, it's a cute deck, and I can see someone who's playing a strategy focused around hitting max speed, especially because this is so easy to get down like turn 1 with like a Chrome Mox, Mox Amber, et cetera, or Mox Diamond, pardon me. And so I can see this coming down early, for example, playing a couple little dorky flyers, right? Like just, your Siren Storm Tamers and things like that, just to get your little pokes in, right? To get your speed up. And then by the time you hit that mid-range game, like everyone's just kind of like, sure, man, draw 2 cards, whatever it is. And I think at a certain point you hit that critical nexus where you're just like ripping cards, and you can start to do sort of like the Edric thing where and extra turns also accelerate your potential for the max speed. And I forgot to say this about the little the beep beep car, but extra turns then allow you to like sort of especially with this one, as you're drawing more cards, right, you're able to then proceed to like go to extra combat, stuff like that, right? So like there's a lot of little sort of cute intricacies you can do with some of these pieces, and at a certain point you just start doing the Edric thing where you're just like ripping a bunch of cards off the top of your library and looping turns and like all that kind of stuff. So like, is it the most broken thing in the world? No. Is it something that I could see someone breaking at some point? Yeah, because it's so innocuous that it's kind of hard to ever justify removing the creature.
And again, it's a 2-mana commander, right? Like, I mean, 2-mana commanders, and that's got a big but. Like, I mean, those things have proven historically that they can be, not necessarily like mainstays, but they can make a statement or come in and do a little upset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I just realized that this is probably a Plagon card, which makes me really happy.
Oh my God.
I will also say one thing I forgot to mention with the other max speed is that max speed is not tied to the game object. Max speed is tied to you as a player, right? Correct. So anything that establishes speed or start your engines, et cetera, they all are tied to like an emblem, right? So if, for example, like you have max speed, your commander dies, doesn't matter. You can't lose the speed. The speed is just there, right? You have max speed for the rest of the game. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that I am speed.
What I'm saying is you do have to go fast, legally speaking.
Next card on our list here is Ketramos, the New Dawn. It is a 4/4 god that costs a generic, a white, and a black. It has Menace, Lifelink, and Indestructible, and it says Ketramos can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. And it also says whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So obviously this with Necropotence is stupid. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Very, very, very good. However,
you turn that into a Yawgmoth's bargain for sure.
You certainly do. You still do have a life total, so be careful.
Well, I guess it's not Yawgmoth's bargain because it's 2 life for 1 card, right?
Yeah. No, it's a little bit. It's like 2 life to. You basically get card selection more than anything. Are there
any cards that say whenever you draw a card, you gain a life in these colors? There have to be, right?
I don't know if there's draw a card, you gain life, but that feels like something that would be in white color pie.
Oh, Shieldred, right?
Oh, Shieldred. Yeah.
Duh. Okay, so if you have Necro and Shieldred, does that draw your entire deck? Well, I guess you draw half of your deck because half of it's exiled.
Sure. Yeah. You get to pick. Though. Yeah. No, that's not bad. So yeah, Ketramos, you can do that. So I mean, that's the deck, right? Like we just described the deck in that little bit, right? That's what it does.
Yeah. It's weird because like black white has been traditionally associated with like Nas or Reanimator style strategies, and this is definitely not a Nas deck, right? Like you're hemorrhaging your own life total in this deck.
I mean, this is weird. It's like a Necro stack, right? Yeah. Because like it wants
I don't know about to say, but like
it wants to play stuff like Rest in Peace and Leyline of the Void and all of that stuff because it wants to get stuff out of your graveyard.
Well, I don't. But at the same time, I don't think you want big sweeping effects like that. I think you want things because it says 1 or more, right? So you want things like Planar Void, right? Which are going to be like, you have that trigger to go, okay, this thing hit the graveyard, now exile it, right? So that's the kind of stuff that you're more so looking to do is like find those little weird niche cards that in the past have been objectively worse than other cards that have existed.
Right.
But like, I love that this is a cantrip with Fairy Macabre. Like little things like that is really funny. The only thing I don't like about this deck is that it says it's on your turn.
Yeah.
That's the tough part for me. That's the big ouchie,
Oh my gosh. You know what this is good with? Is Relic of Progenitus. Relic of Progenitus just is draw a card, lose 1 life with this thing out.
Yeah, I saw Cam from Play to Win messing around with the Relic in this deck for sure.
Yeah. All that, I mean, that's the review. That's our thoughts on the card. I don't know how I feel about it as a commander. I think it's probably fine. I think you're still. It's a fun deck. You're limiting yourself to white black. If you are trying to min max the format, this probably isn't it. But I think that it has some fun elements as a reason to play it. Like it does also hate on some like prominent strategies.
Yeah.
Just kind of naturally.
But this is my complaint about it being on your turn only, right? Is like you're not rewarded for playing good, responsible. I'm going to hit your graveyard when it's relevant magic.
No,
right?
you got to play all in, right?
Yeah, like, exactly. It's not like you can be like, I'll wait for the Hazel Brewmaster, then I'll exile the Devoted Druid. It's like, no, I don't draw a card from that. Why would I ever be responsible, right? So like that's my only my qualm with this card, because like I think you could play such a good mid-range responsible game plan if you were doing 100%. That stuff passively. And now the fact that you have to like go all in with it is, I mean, it's white black. It makes perfect sense, but like, come on, like you could have made a really cool white black commander. It's so close to greatness, you know.
It's very close. Yeah, I don't know. Next card on our list here, it's we got a new one. It's Mimeoplasm, Revered One. This is a 0/0 ooze that costs X generic and then black, green, blue. And it says, as Mimeoplasm enters, exile up to X creature cards from your graveyard. It enters with 3+1/+1 counters on it for each creature card exiled this way. And then it has an activated ability that costs 2 generic that says Mimeoplasm becomes a copy of target creature card exiled with it, except it's a 0/0 and has this ability. Okay, like so there's a combo here. Can you explain it for me so we can move on? Because I hate Mimeoplasm shit.
I don't have the combos off the top of my head, but I'm assuming it's like a Necrotic Ooze, where you're like, you have cards in your yard, and then you go like, cool, I'm 3 things that do stuff, and like, it is whatever. Yeah, like this card is fine, right? Like I don't you know, you're probably playing it for like 3 to 5 mana, or not 3. You're definitely not 3 mana. You're playing between like 5 and 7 mana is what I'm saying. There are 4 and 7 mana, and depending on what you're getting out of your yard, you're making weird Necrotic Ooze piles, all that kind of stuff. I think it's fine. I'm like not in love with it. It's like, it is what it is, right? I don't like, there's probably an argument old Mimeoplasm's a little better, but this one has a lot more like weird counter synergy combos that will probably win the game at some point. But
I'm sure there's something with like a Walking Ballista that works with it.
Yeah, right. Like I think it's like Circle of Dreams Druid and Haste Enabler and like all that kind of malarkey. I'm like, whatever. Yeah, I'm just, it is what it is. You know, I'm not like,
as you can see, it makes me very happy and very excited. I can't wait to play.
Crystalline Crawler is probably one of the combo pieces.
Yeah, probably.
The counters. I don't know, dog.
Listen, man, if you asked me to brew this deck, I'd just be like, really?
I'd rather not. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm with that. With like, I you know, love Mimeo as a character, but it's yeah.
Yeah, I know. Big ooze energy. Next card on our list here is Captain Howler, Sea Scourge. This is a 5/4 shark pirate that costs 2 generic and a blue and red. It has a ward 2 and pay 2 life. And it says whenever you discard 1 or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you draw a card. You know, so I am glad somebody put this on here, because I saw it and I was like, yeah, that's interesting, but I don't know if it would see play or whatever. And then it was either you or Phoenix put this on our set review. I was like, okay, cool. I'm not like out in the wilderness thinking this is playable. Yeah,
I think Phoenix and I both made sure to put this on here, right? Because I think it's actually way better than it looks. Specifically, one thing that is not very clear about this card is that, so for example, if I have Ghostly Pilfer, let's just say the example, right? And I discard 3 separate cards to this, right? And I have Howler target my Ghostly Pilfer. If it connects, I'm drawing 3 cards.
Those are 3 separate triggers.
They are 3 separate triggers. And
that's a lot better. And it can't be blocked. That's a lot better.
Yes.
Wow.
That's what is super unclear about this card. And I think why people keep misreading it, including myself the first time I read it. I was like, yeah, whatever, shark dude. But it's way better than it actually looks. If you did things in one notion, it's like, you know, whatever, right? But like,
you get to play shit like Faithless Looting, right? Like all of that stuff is careful study. All of that stuff is great. You're like cantrips galore, baby.
Ish, right? Because like Faithless Looting gives it +4/+0, but like only draws 1 card, right? Like that's the thing, right? Because it says 1 or more. So it would only give it, Faithless Looting would only give it +2/+0. +4/+0. +2/+0 into the end turn for each card discarded this way.
Oh,
yeah, you get +4/+0, but it would only draw 1 card.
Sure, but I mean, like the point being is, I still think you play all those cantrippy effects because you're wanting to do that sort of thing anyway.
Sure.
You might not min max it perfectly that way, but I still think it's great.
Yeah, I do agree.
Ledger Shredder.
Yes.
Bananas, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Like all the looting effects. And the cool thing is you can do this on your opponent's creatures too during their turn. If you like have a like Ledger Shredder, for example, right? And your opponent casts their second spell before combat, you're like, oh yeah, your Crom's gonna get 2/0 to the end of turn. Have fun. Like, yeah. And it's also very political, right? Like the ability to go like, hey, look, we got to pump your creature so it kills this player. I'll discard a card of my Ghost Spill for a few. Bonk them.
Man.
And then you win.
I really like, and it's like a big body.
Yep.
It's
you
got the protection stapled onto it.
You're also supposed to just play Malcolm Glinthorn in the 99 too, like just because they're both pirates. It's kind of weird and fun, and it works out well with that combo.
I also think that you are probably I was just thinking about this, and then we were talking about Faithless Looting. My brain went somewhere else. I don't remember what it was. Point being, this has a lot of the like the things that I look for in like a new good commander, right? Like, you know, obviously I'm not saying that this is like hash ton good. I think this is a good deck. I think this is like a solid like C+ B- commander, you know. But I think, you know, there's something there. The fact that it has protection stapled onto it makes me like this a hell of a lot more, because if it didn't have that ward ability, I think this would be a hard sell. But, you know, because, you know, people can just remove it, and it's a lot harder to do, as we've seen with Tivit, when it has ward. So, you know, definitely a fan of that. Moving on to our next card here. This is Saheeli, Radiant Creator. This is a 4/4 human artificer that costs a generic, a green, a blue, and a red. It says whenever you cast an artificer or an artifact spell, you get an energy counter. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 3 energy. When you do, create a token that's a copy of target permanent you control, except it is a 5/5 artifact creature in addition to its other types and has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next turn. This is cool. This is cool.
Yeah.
Listen, I love energy, and I love seeing it get more love. So like, all for it.
Yeah, I think I don't know the exact math, but I know that there are ways to have things that basically like when a creature enters, you add an extra energy or like whatever it is. So there are loops that you can create where you just go like, basically Saheeli thing, extra combat, Saheeli thing, extra combat, Saheeli thing, extra combat, Godo style, right? It's a little more, you know, extra pieces, but also like the fair version of this card, right? Just going, all right, sick, like move to combat, make another, you know, like Godo or whatever, like, you know, just like crazy thing, right? You know, here's my heuristic study that's a 5/5 that's going to beat you, right? I think that's less realistic of what you're going to make extra copies of, but like, you know, you can make copies of like Portal to Phyrexia over and over again to like wipe your board state. I know I'm saying like some big swingy cards, right? But like, I think that's the kind of deck that this becomes, right? It's very much like,
I mean, this is like an Aetherworks Marvel sort of style deck, right?
Like, and also you're in Teamers. So like you have like a pretty decent core underneath you.
Right.
But Teamer is definitely a little weird when it comes to like artifact colors specifically, right? Green especially. So I think there's some interesting stuff you can do with it. It just really depends on what you're trying to do with it, right? I think there's, you know, the ability to basically like play something big and splashy that maybe doesn't have haste traditionally speaking. Use Saheeli to make a copy of it that's hasty now.
Right.
As I said, I don't have this ironed out, but it's strong enough that I'm like, there has to be something.
There's something there.
This. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I like it. I think, you know, obviously I don't like it as much as, you know, something like Ketramos or Hashton, but I think it's interesting. I think there's, you know, I like seeing a lot more energy stuff. It's kind of the same thing I said about Madison Lee last year. Is it's one of those things where it's like the more energy stuff we get, the better it gets. And, you know, we're seeing that this is a mechanic that they are giving some love to in the modern era, which I really appreciate. So, you know, that is that. Next card on our list. This is my opinion, the second best commander of this set. This is Loot the Pathfinder. This is a 2/4 Beast Noble that costs 2 generic and a Teamer. It has double strike, vigilance, and haste, and it has 3 exhaust abilities. And the exhaust abilities, the way exhaust works is you can only activate an exhaust ability only once. This one has 3. The first one is tap it for green, pay green, and tap it, add 3 mana of any one color. The other one, pay blue, tap it, draw 3 cards, pay red, tap it, deal 3 damage to any target. So the reason I think this is close to being the best commander of this, I think Hashan, you don't have to do a lot of work to make Hashan immediately good, if that makes sense.
Yep.
This is a beautiful food chain commander because it has all the things you want from a food chain commander. It's got a way to deal damage to everybody. It's got a way to draw you a bunch of cards. It's got a way to filter all of your mana so that you can get that mana to use other things later on down the road. If this didn't have haste, this card would suck donkey balls, but it has haste, so it is quite playable. Like, I think this is quite good. I think the cost is a little steep, but I think for what you're getting on it, you know, it's fine.
I don't think it's even that bad. Yeah, so Lua and I have made a deck already for this. It layers really nicely with like a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, Deadeye Navigator plus Kinnan is infinite mana with this, which then turns into infinite lightning bolts. And I cannot stress enough how having infinite mana and also infinite damage in the zone is so clean for combos.
Yes, it is.
So there's a lot of combos that I've sort of baked into our initial version of this deck. As I mentioned, the food chain stuff does work. It's fine. You know, the thing is,
it's there because it's easy, right? You know,
it's there because it's easier, right? Like, if you have food chain in hand, it's very easy to go tutor squee, right? If you don't have food chain in hand, it's a lot harder to actually execute a win. Right. But like the fact that you can just play loot as sort of this mid-range threat and then just go, okay, cool, like things aren't working out too well, let me just like tap to draw 3 cards and go from like 4 to 7 cards in hand. That it adds up after a little while, right? You play a mid-range teamer plan, you do a lot of Deadeye, Flickering, Cloudstone Curio style stuff. I'm playing the frog version of you know what I'm talking about, the Lily Splash Mentor. In the deck. We're playing Peregrine Drake, so like you're doing a lot of those like land style infinite flicker combos, because guess what, loot is just the win condition in the zone, right? So you go from flickering your infinite mana, you play your loot, GG's, right? It's way easier to combo with than it might look like. It's a little bit of like layered teamer combos, right? It's a bunch of combos that make you go, wow, Dockside would make this great, but we don't have it, so
honestly, I'm glad we don't have Dockside, because I like the deck building around this a lot more, because instead it's not that brain dead, oh, we just Dockside and just make it, just go, baby. And it's like, you have to actually build a deck. Next card here on our list is Sabunin Lua Embodied. This is a 6/6. I hope I said that correctly. This is a 6/6 god that costs 3 generic, a green and a blue, that has a reach, trample, and indestructible. It cannot attack or block unless it has an even number of counters on it. And 0 is even. At the beginning of your first main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then if it had an odd number of counters on it, draw 2 cards. What are your thoughts on this? I think this is a cute commander. Personally, I look at this and I think that it is a fun casual commander, but you added it. So what are your thoughts?
Wait, then if it has, so my idea with this card is that basically you have some sort of effect that after the first main phase puts a 1/1 counter on it, right? So by the time you have, in my opinion, the best way to play this is to have some sort of counter granter, like whatever the stupid thing from Bloomburrow is that says, like, at the beginning of combat, put a counter on your creature. You know what I'm talking about? So, because it starts as the 6/6, right? You move into that first main phase, puts the counter on, it recognizes an odd amount of counters, you draw 2 cards, right? Then, hypothetically, you're going into combat, you're putting a counter on it through some sort of thing. Maybe if it's an Agatha Soul Cauldron, like you play, there's a lot of good cards that just incidentally put counters on. Right? Okay. And then, so every turn, you're basically going, I actually just draw 3 cards every turn. And to me, that's a potent recipe, right? Like that's some like place to just start looping turns, drawing 3 cards every turn. This is kind of like we were talking about with like Verkum, the homunculus, except for we're actually doing what it feels like more achievable goals in this one that naturally add a little bit more synergy here. So like, is there an inherent combo associated with this deck? No. Do I think drawing 3 cards inherently every single turn is powerful? Yeah. So that's kind of where we're going with this guy.
Okay.
You know? And
okay.
the fact that
I can see it.
Indestructible is like, you can cook with some gas. It's a little some stuff going on. Yeah. Also, the art for this card is psychotic in every way, and I love it.
Yeah. I mean, that is Egyptian. It looks like an Egyptian god to me.
Have you seen? I've got to show you the gold version of this, and feel free to put this on the episode, and then you're gonna understand. Just imagine putting that in the command zone.
That is cursed.
I love it.
I hate these gold these yellow borders. It looks like the Oregon Ducks football uniforms. They are so ugly.
I have been calling it the piss border because
it looks ugly.
In person, it's not my favorite thing they've ever done. If I
fully believe it. It looks awful. I just, our fans who watch sports, it looks like an Oregon Ducks uniform. It looks awful. Anyway, next card on our list here. This is Samit, the Driving Force. This is a 4/5 human warrior cleric. I feel like they keep just adding new, creature types to Samit eventually. Yeah. Samit is cost 3 generic, and Naya has first strike, vigilance, and haste. Also has start your engines, and it says other creatures you control get +X+O, where X is your speed. So, just flat +1 at minimum. And then non-creature spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is your speed. So at minimum 1, at most 4. That's not bad, right? Like that's a pretty reasonable reduction on a 5 mana commander or 6 mana commander that also buffs your team. What are your thoughts on this card, Ian?
People are really hyped on this thing. I'm not really sure I exactly get it. I don't know
that I feel it in the command zone.
Yeah, I do think that there is a deck where you basically just, I think you just high value roll. It is my sort of understanding, right? Where you just go like, all right. And I think the way to break this card is actually to play whatever you find acceptable that already has start your engines earlier on. Yeah. So that way, by the time you hit 6 mana, you're probably already closer to max speed. Right. And that way you can go like, all right, cool, play Samit. My entire team has, I don't know, +3/+0 or some crazy shit. Right. And then like, cool, extra combat spell for only 1 mana because it's reduced by 3. And then you're just like, boom, murder. Right. I think that's kind of the idea of what a lot of people have been seeing with this commander. I also think at the end of the day, it just does some generic high value stuff. I don't think that there's anything like explicit with it, but I would not be surprised to see someone just go like, all right, cool. Play Samit, jam, go to combat, play something that gives me an extra turn, like Collected Company for 1 mana, Finale of Devastation, like some absolutely off the wall bullshit. And like, I think it has the potential of doing that kind of crazy stuff of just like sort of OKOing people as soon as it comes down, if you set up your cards correctly, Right.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at this and my immediate thought was, wow, this is a really good Najeela card. And maybe it's not. Sorry. I mean, I look at it and I see a Najeela card because I think it just like, quite frankly, speeds up, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think that there is something there as far as Najeela goes. I think there is a Najeela build out there that is just value town. Yeah. I maybe I'll have to build it eventually. I don't know, but that would require me to brew a deck that isn't,
something you enjoy.
Yeah, quite that. Yes. But yeah, Samit, I think as a commander, it's fine. I don't know that I think of it as highly as others do as a commander. I think this is a really nice, like 99 piece, especially in a deck like Sase, where you are playing warriors and you are playing a bunch of creatures and they're going to get in there. They're going to do a lot of damage. And it's going to decrease the cost of the spells that you want to be casting in that deck anyway. So as a commander, I think it's interesting, but
Yeah, if you have any combos with this, leave it in the comments below because I'm definitely very curious to hear people's thoughts on it for sure.
Absolutely. Now we're out of the commander area. Let's get into the rest of the set. Let's look here at our creatures. What'd you say?
I said the 99.
The 99. We're looking at Marketback Walker here. First, this is a 0/0 construct that cost XX. And it says this creature enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. Has a activated ability that costs 4 generic that says put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And it also says whenever this creature dies, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. You might notice that this is a direct callback to Hangerback Walker.
Mm-hmm. Also, one of the most fun cards to say in a Boston accent. It's just Marketback Walker.
I put my Marketback Walker in the box.
Oh yeah,
it's in my deck box.
I pick up that new card, Marketback Walker.
Put it in my deck box. It's not box, it's back.
It's box. Anyways, Marketback Walker. It's hard. It's a good card. It's
Boston Rob, everybody.
Yeah, Boston. You know what it is? I've been watching the traders, and Boston Rob is just so like
he is just so. You know what? Nobody is more aptly named than Boston Rob.
Yep.
Anyway, this is a good card. I think it's quite. Anybody can look at this and go, "Yeah, that's good." Yeah. You see what it does.
I think there's like a lot of, Rayhan and like quirky fringe style stuff that like plays a deck like this.
This is a thing I've talked about. Like, I don't know if I've talked about it on the show or not, but something I definitely have talked about a reasonable amount off the show is I think there's like a Rayhan Ishai.
Yeah. You did talk about it a little
hard
bit
in scales type deck out there somewhere.
Yeah, we were talking about Proliferate a ton last week. Like, makes sense that like a card like this would be like, oh, cool, dies, draw 5. Like, don't mind if I do.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's enough of these abilities out there between like hardened scales and the Ozolith, and you've got like Lae'zel. Like, you've got all these different abilities out there. Like, I think that there is a like hardened scales-esque deck in the format somewhere. Yeah. Somebody's just got to find it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Every time I've tried to brew it, I don't get super excited. It's not my style of deck. I just think it exists.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think this is always one of those funny things about like making content like this, where it's like, no, this is broken. We just don't we don't always have every hour in the day to work on every project that we think is worth exploring. You know what I mean? And this is definitively that, where it's like this is one of those cards that on a fundamental level, like they used to give you bodies for every one counter, right? Like this is a card for every counter on this card. This is fundamentally busted in the right environment. You just got to actually put it in the right environment, right?
Yep.
And
100%.
oh my God, not to mention all the the KCI bullshit with this card.
Oh yeah.
It like if you scrap trolley this, it's a 0 drop that you pull out of the graveyard. Ooh, that's actually really potent. I feel like this is like a Teshar card, maybe. Huh.
It could be. It could also be that Mendicant Core card we were talking about earlier too. Like this could be like an outlet for something like that. So who knows? Dick's getting hard over there, huh? Next card on our list here. What'd you say?
I cannot believe you just said that.
Listen, man, we're 42 minutes into the show. We are long past any part where we would have gotten demonetized for anything. We have passed that first 120 seconds. It's all out. It don't matter. Beast Rider Vanguard. It's our next card here. This is a 2/2 human knight that costs a generic and a green. Has an activated ability that costs 4 generic and a green. That says, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Infinite mana outlet for folks, buddy.
Yeah,
that's what this is.
For those who have not spent thousands of hours looking at stupid mono green combos, they often need creatures that are infinite mana outlets. This is probably the most efficient version of that. That doesn't have as many downsides as previous versions. For example, look up Duskwatch Recruiter if you're curious about what the fuck we're talking about. This is better. Done.
It doesn't flip over, and that's the big upside of it, honestly. That was kind of
Also, the fact that it's
issue with
permanent
it, right?
and doesn't just say creature, right? Like that's it has a lot more modality. It covers for situations of blah 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 blah. This 100%. 90% of our audience should not give a shit. The 10% who do will know why this is good.
Hey, you, not you, you.
Yeah, you.
This card slaps, right?
You. That one. Yeah,
you get it. That guy gets it. Next card on our list here. This is a card that I didn't even know was in the set.
Yeah.
Until Ian pointed it out to me the other day when we were talking about decks to play this weekend. And I was like, this is interesting. This is Redshift Rocketeer Chief. This is a 2/3 Goblin pilot. Yes, this is a legend. It's not a commander we're talking about. But it costs a red and a green.
You can play this as your commander, and I know
but you'd be fucking stupid if you did that.
Dog. I think it's actually totally fine. I think actually, I'm pretty sure Sick Robot's actually working on a version of this right now.
Fuck you, Reed. Fucking Canadians. We're in a trade war. We don't talk about those guys, right?
Holy shit. Okay, yeah.
Love you, Reed. Redshift here. It is a 2/3 Goblin pilot, costs a red and a green, has vigilance. You can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is Redshift's power. You could spend this mana only to activate abilities. And it also has an exhaust ability that costs 10 generic, a red and a green. Put any number of permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield.
I'm also realizing this just works with like Staff of Domination if you just pump its power in red green, which is the easiest colors to pump something's fucking power.
Yeah.
This card might be way better than I actually thought. And I already thought it was pretty decent. So on a very face level, if you're playing like a Thrasios deck, this is a free from the real enabler, right? You just, without any sort of pump spells, you just go, cool, free from the real, tap for 2 blue, untap for 1 blue, tap for 2, et cetera, make infinite mana of every color, Thrasios, blah, 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 blah. From that point.
Thras Bruce players, eat your heart out.
Yeah. I was looking at like a Thrial version, Thrasios Smasher, but like it's all right. Also, the fact that this is a mana dork that at some point just allows you to go everything in my hand onto battlefield is pretty cool. Yeah, exactly. I think it's pretty sweet. I think this is actually a way better card than it seems at first glance, hence me reacting to it right now in that way. I think this is one of those cards that you stare at long enough and you go like, oh, it does this thing. Wait, it actually does this thing. But it does do this thing. And I think honestly, if it didn't have that limitation of only use it for activated abilities, this card would be kind of fundamentally busted. So
it is so funny, the things that like you and Reed or even Phoenix will pique your interest.
Yeah.
Because like you guys see these things and you're like, oh shit. And I see stuff, we're going to talk about it next, but like Riptide Mystic or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, fuck yeah. Like the type of stuff that piques my interest is just so different. It's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. No, it's fair enough. Right. But yeah, I think this is, I think it's a pretty cool card in general.
Yeah.
It's not fundamentally insane, but like it does some cool stuff. And also if you're playing this deck as like the commander, you get to just sort of manually he was saying you play, what is it? The snake pump spell that turns into a 6/4, right? And then you're like, cool, tap it for 6, use like Legolas's to untap it one time, tap for 12 mana, activate the ability, and just GG's. You know what I mean? Like just stupid bullshit like that. It's very silly. It's very over the top. Will this be winning every tournament? Absolutely not. Will I expect to see it at least one time in a top 16? Yeah, I think so. It's very crazy, over the top. Like you play this deck if you're a goblin player, you're going to like this deck. Actually, I think that's a pretty safe line in the sand to draw. If you love going beep beep and like sending some crazy spells, this is going to be a really good deck for you. And also in the 99, it works.
Surreal, this is for you.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I forgot to mention. This is really good in Sisay specifically because it's a legend that taps for mana. Worst case scenario, it's only tapping for 1 for Sisay activations. But there's some new lines that this sort of opens up in Sisay that make it actually a little bit more attractive.
Doesn't it make X-Men have any one color?
It does. That's why I'm saying it opens up very specific lines in Sisay. Also, the fact that Sisay can potentially get up to the activation for the exhaust and like kind of just win is very funny to me.
Yeah. Hey, all about it. Next card on our list here is Riptide Mystic. This is a 2/1 zombie bird wizard that costs a generic and a blue, has flying, and says each creature card in your hand has cycling generic and a blue. Listen, not a lot to say about it. It's cool. I like it. My version of Hashan would be playing this. I think this is a solid card. But
I think an uncounterable 5 mana draw card spell it's fine, but 2-1 in the current format I'm not very excited about.
That's fair.
Like just randomly getting cycling on some cards that you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't have that. Like, I just think there's play a Ledger Shredder, you know what I mean? Instead.
Well, yes, down the list of cards, this is probably the worst of all of the discard outlets. But yeah. I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I can get behind that card. I think that's interesting. I think that listen, those sorts of cards like this, they're super boring. I like the role players, Ian. I like the cards.
This is a role player though. This is like a spice role player, and it's a bad one at that.
Even then, right? I get excited about the cards who go in and they're not looking to be, they're not looking to make a name for themselves. So they're just coming in, they're collecting their paycheck, they're doing their job, they're going home to their wife and kids, and just doing the Lord's work every day, day in, day out. That's the type of card I'm looking for. All right.
A depressed one? What the shit? Anyways, moving on.
Next card on our list here is Wizened Mentor. This is a 2/2 zombie cleric that costs a generic and a white. It says whenever an opponent activates an ability of a permanent that isn't a mana ability, you create a 1/1 white zombie creature token. This ability only triggers once each turn.
Listen, I agree that only triggering once per turn is kind of a stinky poo-poo garbage. But if that triggered not only once per turn, this card would be actually fucking busted because you crack a fetch land, you activate any ability. It's any ability of anything. And it's just
in the commander set though.
I know.
God, come on, guys. Have some conviction behind your card design, guys. Yeah. Come on.
And so it's very fair, right? Yeah. I'm assuming legitimately that this procs once a turn, kind of no matter
100%,
what.
Yeah.
And so with that, some people were talking to me about this in Winota, and I do kind of agree that it's, I don't love aggro bodies in Winota, but when this makes as many bodies as this does as consistently, this is one of the few versions of these effects that doesn't give your opponents a choice, right? For example, look at Charismatic Conqueror, right?
Yeah.
It can be Staxy and it can be body making, right? This just makes the bodies. It doesn't give them the choice to make things tapped or whatever. It does the thing,
I know I was making the noise, but as I just got done saying, I like the role players. I like those guys. Yeah. They aren't sexy. They're not going to win, America's Next Top Model or anything, but they're going to go in nice mid-level market manager.
I don't have time for your convoluted metaphor. We got a lot of cards to talk about.
I like this card. I do. I think in a deck like Winota, it's definitely a good role player.
Yeah.
Next card on our list here is Adrenaline Jockey. This is a 3/3 Minotaur pilot that costs 2 generic and a red. And it says whenever a player casts a spell, if it is not their turn, this creature deals 4 damage to them. Whenever you activate an exhaust ability, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. The second part of this doesn't fucking matter. It's that first line of text that's good. This card we've talked about the Punisher style deck on this channel.
A lot. This is a second Scytheclaw Raptor, which I always thought Scytheclaw Raptor was a really unique and powerful effect. So the fact that we have a second one is really good. If you put this in a deck like Solifem that says if your opponents cast a card or cast a spell on not their turn, they take 8 damage, right? This is the chunks of 4 are not trivial.
No, they're not. I mean, this is a big deal. I like this card. I mean, again, it's these Punisher style deck cards have a lot of cards in them that on their face you don't really think about, right?
Yeah.
But they add up over the course of a game. I really like this, and if I can like Shieldred, I can like this, right? Next card on our list here is Howlsquad Heavy. This is a 2/3 Goblin Mercenary that costs 2 generic and a red, has start your engines, and it says other goblins you control have haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red creature or red goblin creature token. That token attacks this combat if able. Has max speed. Ability is tap it, add red for each goblin you control. Fuck me. I did not realize it was for you control. I had originally read this as like it adds mana equal to your speed or whatever.
No, it's each goblin you control. Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah. Like this is an engine card. It takes a little bit to get online, but when it gets online, and it's not like you need to be playing Goblin Type for that to work, right? Like you are making actively goblins every single turn, right? So it's like this itself can just end up tapping for 3 or 4 over by the time you get to max speed, right? So this is very, very silly. Yeah. It's very cool stuff here. I think we've talked a little bit in the past when General Crete was printed about how, and also like this is just better than other goblins that have existed in the past, right? Like I think it's probably better than Legion Warboss.
For sure.
And so now like we have a better version of these types of effects, right? And I think at a certain point there's going to be a goblin aggro deck that's actually kind of real and does some cool goblin combos.
It's about time, honestly. It's about time.
It really does. Like goblins in cEDH have been so close for so long. It's just mono red doesn't have that level of consistency that you need for combo specific decks. So we've got to find it's really more about the commander that we need. Like we need like an Izzet goblin. Well, I don't think Redshift necessarily matters here, right? Redshift is a combo on its own, right? But we need some sort of like I genuinely think like an Izzet goblin commander would be going a long way, just like giving you the ability to care about goblins, but also maybe draw some cards, have some counter spells, some shit like that, right? Like I need a goblin that allows me.
You
to play
need a second color.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Izzet, right? Like there could be an aggressive black-red, which is very canonically goblin combo commander, right? But I think we just need something to just sort of glue
you
it all
could do
together.
like Tevish Breaches or something like that, right? Like you could do like a Tevish Vial Smasher, or like then you could do stuff with the Tevish that like does stuff with the bodies you're making.
Yeah, but like those are things that like they do stuff outside of this, right? I think we need something that actually gives a shit about goblins, right? Like that's more my point.
I get you. I agree. I'm just throwing shit at the wall, right?
Yeah.
Next card on our list is Magmakin Artillerist. This is a 1/4 elemental pirate that costs 2 generic and a red. It says whenever you discard one or more cards, this creature deals that much damage to each opponent. Woof. Has cycling that costs a generic and a red, and it says whenever you cycle this card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Hey guys, I don't know if you've ever heard of a little card called Nixilis, but this is probably good.
It's an op card. It's also a Malcolm card, right? Like this is a pirate, right?
Oh shit, so, it is a pirate. Yeah. Huh.
That's the reason I have this on here, is because there is like this set especially has like a lot of discard pirate type synergies.
Wait,
right?
So even if you cycle it, if you have Malcolm out, it makes 3 treasures, right?
I don't think so.
Because
it's not a pirate you control, right? It's,
fair. Okay.
Yeah.
That's still really good.
Yeah.
So if you discard a card,
it does. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I actually don't know for sure if that triggers Malcolm or not.
I would assume it doesn't.
I would also assume it doesn't, but I mean, at minimum, it can make 3 treasures whenever you discard a card. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Right. Exactly. That's the thing, is like there's definitely some like cycle pirate stuff going on here.
Malcolm Ketos, eat your heart out, baby. Like this is your shit.
Yep.
Next card here, we've got Stridehangar Automaton. This is a 1/4 construct that costs 3 generic. That says Thopters you control, you get +1/+1. If one or more artifact tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying are created and said, Jesus Christ, that's a mouthful.
This is by far one of the most broken cards in this set. I do like it is. That replacement effect is so good. There are so many of these layered food treasure token like combo decks that need an effect like this. Like if you see how much there are a bunch of fringe decks that give so much of a shit about oh my god, what the fuck is the name of that card, Cal? The one that goes from treasures or foods or clues to all of them. Academy Manufactor, right?
Yeah.
The fact that we have redundancy on that type of effect, and that this works with universal tokens, not just any artifact tokens, but not just specifically like the treasure, food, clue core, right? The fact that it can work with blood tokens and like all of that kind of stuff. Like this is actually really, really solid. If you haven't spent time deep diving on these types of decks, it's going to sound like it doesn't really, like, very low impact, basically.
Sure.
But effects like this with things like Nuka-Cola Machine, Manufactor, like all those kinds of things, they layer so tightly that when you have decks like this, it becomes almost trivial to combo because every single card in your deck combos with other combos. And the fact that this is printed means that it's not just one combo that gets added to these decks. It's basically 15 to 20 combos that are now available because this card combos with X amount of other permutations of other cards, right? So it's not just like one more thing in your deck does this combo. It's specifically the fact that it's colorless, so that there are dozens of versions of these
go
decks.
Anywhere.
Exactly. And the fact that it can go anywhere, it's super easy to tutor for. It's specifically constructs are really easy archetypes to tutor for. And it combos with, as I mentioned, like, the sort of entire array of other things. This is really, really big for some of those fringe archetypes that, the thing that makes these archetypes even slightly considerable or playable is that they're really hard to interact with, because you just play a bunch of creatures and you're like, cool, make some tokens that trigger this thing that now trigger this thing. And then you go like, I made infinite. Right. And you're like, what just happened in front of me? Right. So
I just watched an OK Go music video. What the fuck?
So this being printed, as I said, it's not just one extra combo in the deck. It creates dozens and dozens and dozens of realities in which you just sort of stumble into one of your plethora of combos. So really, really big pickup for decks like that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. You don't have to spend your time investing in decks like this, but these decks become more and more viable every time a card like this gets printed. And the fact that they're 1/1 Thopters, the fact that they're creatures, is also going to create X amount of permutations of triggers. Like it's just very, very solid.
I also want to get out in front of this because you mentioned Academy Manufactor, and there's a whole little subclass of Tivit players that think that card is the truth. And I'm here to tell you it's not. And this card is not a Tivit card. I know that there are people who watch who are friends of mine who think that Academy Manufactor is a Tivit card. And I disagree. You think you're wrong. Just play good cards.
I do too, but it's fun to give you shit about it. But I do like these types of decks, to be clear.
I do like these types of decks. I don't think they're Tivit cards, right? Like I think they do other thing cards, right? Like they're KCI loops and all that nonsense, right?
And if
like
you're going to play that version of Tivit, it's a very different version.
Completely different type of deck. Like we are not even talking about the same deck at that point. Like whenever I see people talk about it, I'm just like, well, what does this add? Right. It always feels like it's shoved into the control version. And I'm like, that's not what this deck is doing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. Yep.
So, but that being said, I think it's a great card. I think it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see what people can do. This card very much inspires me to fuck around with a lot of stuff. KC. Anyway,
it's very KCI build for sure. Like absolutely.
You and I, this is one of our crossovers as Magic players, is you and I both anytime there is a glimpse of this might be a KCI deck, both of our ears perk up and we're like, huh?
Speaking of KCI, how about a card that can tutor for KCI?
This is a beautiful transition, Ian. Transit Mage. This is a 2/2 human wizard that costs 2 generic and a blue. And says whenever this creature enters, you may search your library for an artifact card with mana value 4 or 5, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle.
The cycle is complete.
This is the Wheel of Time cycle.
We've got Trophy Mage, we've got Trinket Mage, we've got Treasure Mage, and now we got Transit Mage, baby. Bonk.
Remember, you can take the wheel if you want, but I choose the music.
I absolutely cannot believe that this is the art we have to deal with for this cycle. Also,
I know. Fucking, it looks like Jack Black cosplaying as a tiefling, like, or trying to be like what's his name, like the eunuch from Game of Thrones, trying to do his best rock star impression.
It looks like a player I would meet at a tournament who then tries to explain one of my own decks to me.
You see, Kinnon's actually really complicated, and what you need to do here.
Exactly the energy I get from this guy, for sure. Yeah,
that's so funny. That's what it does. It tutors your One Ring, guys. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Tutors KCI One Ring, your Paradox Engine. No,
I literally had a dream last night that they unbanned a ton of cards, and one of them was Paradox Engine. I literally woke up and I was like, oh man, that's cool. And then I like looked at my phone for a second. I was like, oh no, that was a dream.
I just realized this is fucking insane in Derevi. We now have a way to creature tutor, get our One Ring or our Shorikai. Like, that's actually so good.
Pog.
Oh, Ian, happy boy. I will be taking Alterist to change that art, though.
Honestly, another card that isn't bad in Derevi. This is Brightglass Gearhulk. This is a 4/4 construct that costs 2 green, 2 white, and it has first strike in trample, and says when this creature enters, you may search your library for up to 2 artifact, creature, and or enchantment cards with mana value 1 or less. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. This is good.
All right. On to the next one. No.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I don't have strong feelings about it, other than the fact that it's just like, yeah, it tutors stuff and it does it pretty efficiently. Like,
yeah, so I know, like, I was talking with Sam of the Howling Saltmine, and this is like a crazy Marath piece, right? Because you go grab your like hardened scales and your ballista or whatever like sort of bullshit you do in that deck. It grabs Esper Sentinels, it grabs Deafening Silence, it grabs like, and this is not just Marath based specifically, but like this card has enough generic value where it's probably worth it. I can easily picture worlds where you grab like, I don't know, some sort of 1-drop combo piece and like a Walking Ballista, as I mentioned, as like your outlet for those combos, right? So it's a role player. There are going to be decks that adore this card. Basically, every deck that goes Ranger Captain in my deck is actually pretty good because I get these 2 functions.
That was a really good Jeremy impression you did just then.
Yeah, it do be like that. But also,
see, what my deck's going to do is it's going to loop Ranger Captain. You're never going to be able to cast any spells.
Shit, dog.
I love you, Jeremy.
And also, any Bant deck that's just like 4 mana, go grab your Mystic Remora.
Yeah.
Actually, I hate that. That's kind of cringe.
That is kind of cringe, but it is there. It goes get your Mystic Remora and your Esper Sentinel, get fucked.
I do genuinely think in like Rector TNT, this is like, okay, I'll go grab a Mystic Remora and a Carrion Feeder, which is like,
yeah,
kind of awful, but also powerful, you know, like, or Mockingbird. Like, there's just so many cards that this goes and grabs. It's like, yeah, all right.
I mean, this is, you know, like I said, this guy, he goes in, he does his job. He's never late. He's always on time.
Shit.
Reliable role player, you know.
Shit.
Next card on our list here. This is Nissa, World Soul Speaker. This costs, it is a 3/3 elf druid that costs 3 generic and a green. Has a landfall ability that says whenever a land you control enters, you get 2 energy. And you may pay 8 energy rather than pay the mana cost for a permanent spell you cast. I added this specifically because of the fact that, hey, mono green decks that play Ashaya, you now have another outlet for all of that stuff. You right there who plays mono green decks that does stuff with needing an outlet from Ashaya, not you. You go sit back down. You know what you did. This card is for you. That's what I have to say about it. It's cool.
Yeah, I also think like Tachova decks and stuff like that. Like it's pretty cool in that type of place.
I think the ability to have like the ability that you get like something, or even like a Kodama sort of thing, right? Where like you could get like a thing going, like it gives you a payoff for doing stuff with land. I think that is the part of it I really like.
I'm like not in love with it, but like it's fine.
Yeah, again, like it goes to work, collects a paycheck, it's never late.
Shut the fuck up.
Next card on our list here is another legend. This is Ovaya Automac Artisan. This is a 1/2 human artificer that costs 3 generic and a green. It says each creature that's attacking one of your opponents has trample. Also has an activated ability that costs a green. And it says you may put a creature or vehicle card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you put an artifact onto the battlefield this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it.
Elvish Piper, Monster Manual, Sneak Attack. These are all effects Kona that do the same thing. These effects are kind of interesting in fringe decks. This one works because you can put it under an Agatha Soul Cauldron. Ooh, that's different. Was that it? Did I do the thing? For some background, this was Cal. I specifically had the introduction of me going, "Isn't this worse than Kona?" And Cal goes, "Well, you can put it in a Soul Cauldron," and that's the TLDR version.
Yeah. No, it doesn't need to. It doesn't need like a main phase or whatever. However, it is that it works with like Kona. Like it just
the instant speed part of it is actually kind of attractive, right? Like that's. But so can Elvish Piper, cEDH staple. Or Monster Manual, cEDH staple.
I think you are thinking too small.
The world's your oyster. And boy, can I put Agatha's Soul Cauldron on an oyster.
Next card on our list here, it's Priest of the Crossing. I don't have a lot of big feelings about this card, but it's a 3/3 zombie bird cleric that costs 3 generic and white. As flying and says at the beginning of each end step, put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of creatures that died under your control this turn.
That's a lot of counters.
That's a lot of counters.
Yeah. I think we don't have to go too crazy, but like if you are playing some sort of aristocrat-y style.
Wow, that's a lot of counters. That's my what's his name from the you know what I'm talking about? The Flex Seal guy.
Yeah.
Flex Tape. That dude.
It's Flex Tape, yeah. Anyways, next card, Waxen Shape Thief for 3 and a blue. This is a flash clone. It says you may have this creature enter as a copy of an artifact or creature you control, and it has cycling 2 for 3 and a blue.
You mean 2 generic?
What did I say? No,
it's 3 and a blue. That's its casting cost.
Yeah. Cycling is 2 generic mana, yes.
And if you want to get this effect at instant speed without people being able to interact with it for the cost of 1 more blue mana than its casting cost, if you have Hashan out, you can just put a copy of it onto the battlefield and have a 4/4 version of whatever the fuck you want.
But it has to be something you control, so it's kind of limited.
It's a little limited. I don't have strong feelings about this card. It's a fine card.
Slightly worse than Stunt Double because it only gets your own stuff, but also more flexible because cycling and other things. It's okay.
Moving on.
Oh, wait, it's an even clone, Gyruda.
Next card on our list here. This is a card that I think is probably a Hashan card. This is Riptide Gearhulk. This is a 2/5 construct that costs a generic 2 white and 2 blue, has double strike, prowess. And when this creature enters, for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library, 3rd from the top.
Hey, do you like 1 removal spell? How about 3? And also a big beefy boy. Welcome to our Gearhulk friend. It's 3 removal spells on 1 boy. It's also got a higher.
What is this Justin Roiland impression you're doing right now?
Yeah, fair enough. No, I think it's 3 removal spells stapled onto 1, right? Yeah. Like it's pretty efficient removal. It's not one of those like exile until it leaves types of things, right? So it can be flickered, which is pretty hot. So if you're doing any sort of blue-white stuff where you can afford to pay 5 mana for this, it's pretty good. That's my biggest downside is that like the cost is insanely real.
It's very real.
But if you can cheat it in or afford to pay for the cost while holding up interaction, it's pretty freaking powerful if you get it to actually work.
I mean, like I said, in like a deck like Hashan where you have like a way to discard this at instant speed, right? Like this ends up being like if somebody drops an op agent and there's a permanent, you're like, well, I kind of would like this to be exiled.
It's not a bad call to be honest.
It's not bad. It deals with stuff pretty quickly.
It's also like not legendary, right? So you can like copy it multiple times, and like I think it's kind of interesting. I think the argument becomes like, why not just what's the stupid pirate that's 3 mana? You know what I'm talking about?
No,
it turns things into treasures,
right? But this like puts them in their deck, and then it's like, okay,
I hear you, right? Like
this is better.
Exactly. It doesn't have the like when this thing goes away. Is it larceny?
Yeah. No, I like this a lot. I think this is a Hashan card for sure. Next card on our list here is Full Throttle. This is a sorcery that costs 4 generic and 2 red, and it says after this main phase there are 2 additional combat phases. At the beginning of each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attacked this turn.
Are you playing Narset or Samit or Karlach or other deck that cares about extra combats? Then you might like this one. If not, you won't like this one.
Anyways,
move on.
Next card here on our list, this is Seers Chariot. This is a 3/3 vehicle that costs a generic and a white, has flying, and says as this vehicle enters, choose a non-land card name. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name costs 2 generic more to activate, and it has crew 2. You specifically wanted to talk about this because you think it's a trap.
Yes, there are so many better versions of this effect. There is Pithing Needle and Disruptor Flute and
Phyrexian Revoker.
Phyrexian Revoker. There's a lot of better versions of this card that exist. So don't play this.
Play the good ones.
Play the good ones. It's really cool. I do appreciate that like WotC is not afraid to print stacks effects. They've been actually printing a decent amount of playable ones over the past few sets, which I genuinely really appreciate because I think they are an underloved archetype. And I think it's very easy to play a big stupid blue draw spell or a counter spell or whatever it might be. But like it's nice to have these types of effects from time to time. It's just this one's a little small ball. It does allow you to shut off mana abilities, which is kind of interesting.
That is an upside that some of the other ones we mentioned don't have.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, that's not enough of a criteria that I'm very excited about it.
Yep, 100%. Next card on our list here, it's another vehicle. It's a 4/4. It's Lifecraft Engine. This costs 3 generic. It says as this vehicle enters, choose a creature type. Vehicle creatures you control are the chosen creature type in addition to their other types. Each creature you control of the chosen type other than this vehicle gets +1/+1, and it has crew 3.
This is the most fucking Magda-pilled card in the entire world.
You play Magda and you want a Lord?
You want a Lord, but also it turns your other vehicles into dwarves as well, right? So
they can crew other vehicles.
Yeah, right. So you can literally have your clown car crew this card as a dwarf and then create treasures from it as well.
I hate that deck so much.
So
it gives me an aneurysm every time we talk about it. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this plays every card I hate.
Genuinely an insane printing for Magda.
Yeah.
I think it just gives this deck just like a little bit of extra sauce that it probably needed in the current metagame, because I noticed the deck is struggling a little bit right now. Yeah. So a little bit of Magda love. We love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Next card on our list here is Monument to Endurance. This is a 3 generic artifact that says whenever you discard a card, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You can either draw a card, create a treasure token, or each opponent loses 3 life. Generally decent card. Here you go.
Does your commander care about this card? Maybe think about this.
Does it care about discard? Does it care about discard?
Yeah. No, I got it.
Okay. I wanted to make sure you got it, though.
Yeah.
I needed you to confirm that for me.
Because it sounds like you're saying this card, which is fun. I think they call that a pun. Hold on, wait a minute. That was actually funny.
It's even funnier because we had to explain the joke. Next card on our list here is Repurposing Bay. This is a 2 generic and a blue artifact. has an activated ability that costs 2 generic. You tap it and sacrifice another artifact. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle, activate only as a sorcery. Wow, Ian, this sure sounds like another card that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, Artifact Birthing Pod. Like if you're not playing Iron
Arkham
Man,
Dagson, eat your heart out.
Yeah. Like this basically does the Iron Man effect, which is interesting because that's probably underexplored in general. But like, it does some cool stuff. And the fact that made an Artifact Birthing Pod, it feels like this probably combos way easier than one might think.
I would agree with that, 100%. Next card on our list here, we're just kind of breezing through shit. This is Radiant Lotus. This is a 6 generic mana artifact. Has an activated ability that's to sacrifice 1 or more artifacts. Choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color for each artifact sacrificed this way. This is a card that both of us were like, I don't know if this gets played anywhere, but it certainly has text that seems like it could do something sometime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not a believer, but I've heard whisperings that folks are like, "Well, you can do this." I think it's bad, but
yeah, $35. Jesus Christ!
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness!
Anything you put the word Lotus on, people are going to be like, "Well, wait a minute."
But I couldn't play that in my Lotus deck. Next card on our list here, this Renewed Solidarity. This is an enchantment that costs 2 generic and a white. It says as this enchantment enters, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+0. At the beginning of your end step, for each token you control of the chosen type that entered this turn, create a token that's a copy of it. It's kind of an Ocelot Pride sort of card, right? Like,
yeah. This is our segment that returns to the show. Is this
Najeela card?
Yes, I think.
Probably.
The fact that you get to go, all right, go to combat. Najeela becomes a 4/2. Swing in, make a warrior, move to end step. Now I have 2 warriors. Is the floor of this card.
Combat math accelerated.
Yeah, I was talking about this with Phoenix last night as someone who used to be a very avid Najeela-er. And basically the conclusion we came to is that the math at some point actually passes shared animosity as far as effectiveness at killing the table, which is kind of terrifying. And this can also be played early and stick around and not necessarily. Basically, this is the definition of a snowball Najeela piece. But also any creature token strategy should probably be paying attention to this card. I think that's actually really interesting. Any sort of typal tokens, pay attention, especially if you end up doing like we've talked about before that the Goblin Winota list, right? Like that is very appropriate in this type of deck as well. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. Next card on our list here is it's your boy. You know him. You love him. It's Jace. He's back. Jace knew that if he had time to explain his plan, he would find support. Unfortunately, time was in short supply. And so he hatched an unstoppable plan. That costs 2 generic and a blue. It's an enchantment. And it says at the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control. Good card.
Yeah. Plus, combo card, fun fact. If you play something like Strionic Resonator, for example, you're able to go infinite. You move to your end step. You have, let's say, a Mana Vault and Strionic Resonator. You go, okay, cool. I'm going to tap Mana Vault for 3 and copy the plan trigger.
I'm here now. Yeah. Sorry. I had to process that one a little bit.
Yeah, you basically put infinite copies of Unstoppable Plans untappability on the stack and generate infinite mana. So, this is a very free card to stick in, like an artifact heavy or dork heavy Thrasio style deck. And then sometimes the idea that you can just sort of combo with it is pretty sick. My sort of inclination has been, find a deck that plays Thrasios that probably already wants to be playing a Strionic Resonator type effect, right? So like find some sort of main game plan part where like that card's not just dead outside the combo.
Right.
And then this card is very easy to justify, right? Like at the end of the day, like you're untapping mana so you can interact with the rest of the pod, right?
I mean, I think there are a lot of decks that it's pretty like easy to justify, just like generally speaking, honestly, like even outside of that situation. Like I think this is just
and so, like
pretty
outside of the combo, right? That's what I'm saying. Like it's just a generically value based card, right? Like the idea that you can go like probably pay 3 for this on your turn and then be like, cool, now I get to be responsible and hold up interaction for the rest of the game, right?
Yep.
Like this is crazy in Shortguy too, right? Like just being able to have Shortguy itself and all of your other things. I think a lot of the, as mentioned, Thrasio style decks, any commander that cares about tapping, I could see it in like a Glarb, you know? And in fact, like a lot of the times with Glarb, like you don't really want to untap like all of your lands as much, but you do want to untap Glarb itself. And this is pretty cheap. So there's a lot of like really cool decks that I think this could find a place in. So I'm actually a pretty big fan. Yeah,
I like this card too. Next card is March of the World Ooze. This is an enchantment that costs 3 generic and 3 green. That says creatures you control have base power and toughness 6/6 and are oozes in addition to their other types. And whenever an opponent casts a spell, if it is not their turn, you create a 3/3 green elephant creature token. That's also an ooze.
Yep.
But that's also 6/6.
To me, this reminds me of if Lurking Predators didn't have the chance of whiffing all the time.
Yeah.
Which I think is actually nice because it's very consistent, right?
Sure.
If I'm playing some sort of, for example, like Kodama style deck, right? It's not something like that. Or a deck that can just afford to play some heavier mana value enchantments. I actually really like this because what this card does is say, like, I'm not winning the game right away, but basically as the game progresses, I'm going to put something like 48 power on the board, right? And just put a clock on there for real. And also sometimes this is just like an overrun, right? Like if you've got a bunch of 1/1s or whatever, you just go, cool, things are 6/6s, you know?
Right.
So is it easy to cheat in? Not exactly, but I think this card has a lot more legs than people are giving it. Sort of in my discussions about it so far, I actually think it's pretty sick. Like I could easily see this card winning multiple games as a win condition, completely agnostic of whatever the rest of the strategy of your deck might be, you know?
Yeah, sure. I don't have strong feelings about it, but yeah, I believe you.
Also, we're in green, so Allosaur Shepherd protection, Destiny Spinner protection.
Like, that's hot, honestly. Yeah. That's maybe the best part about it, honestly.
Yeah.
All right, we're down to our last 2 cards. Well, this is technically 6 cards, but we're going to talk about the Verge cycle. It was completed. I don't really have a lot more to say about that other than the fact that we have more good, you know, like the Bleach Bone Verge, for instance, will probably replace something in Tivit, right? Like, like it's just an upgrade to some of the mana bases in the format. Like
I've just seen a lot of folks who have been working with on mana bases and stuff just sort of skim over the Verge cycle when they're probably some of the best non-basic lands we've gotten.
100%. So like I think these are probably better than the like what is it, the ones that tap for colorless and then the pain lands, right? That deal 1 damage to you. Like I think these are probably better than that.
Depending on the deck, I agree.
Yeah. But yeah, the Verge cycle has been completed. So there you go. And our last card here, this is Muraganda Raceway. This is a land that has start your engines and it has add a colorless and it's at max speed. You add 2 colorless. So this is just like kind of free.
Yeah. Feels pretty nice, right? Like it's like if you're a deck that kind of wants an Ancient Tomb or City of Traders, or specifically City of Traders, right? If you're a deck that wants City of Traders but really can't afford the I'm going to strip my own land at some point version of City of Traders, that's where this goes in. Also, not to mention all of the Start Your Engines decks that we've talked about earlier today.
Just get a free Ancient
Tomb. You get this. You can play this on turn 1, which means that you can start moving upwards as early as turn 1, right?
Like you can start your engines on turn 1, man. Like
like you can just like play a Gingerbread or fucking whatever, right? And then like poke somebody for 1 with this colorless land, and then go, all right, I'm already at speed 2 on turn 1, right? So it's pretty easy to start this off in certain archetypes that sort of get this thing going, you know. And also, as you mentioned, like it's sort of incidentally free in certain decks, right? Like I could see this in a Thrasio style long game.
I mean, I could see it in Tivit, honestly. Like I don't know if Tivit has the like start your engine support for it.
Sure.
But like, you know, Tivit's a deck that you already like like you were just saying with City of Traders, we'd love to play City of Traders, but I can't afford to lose a lane to strip mine myself, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so this is a card that it's like if I were playing a build that played more Start Your Engines cards in it, you know, I'd probably think about this card.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the set. The set was interesting. I mean, we got one really solid banger out of this for sure. At least one really solid banger out of this. What are your thoughts on the set overall?
I think this is definitely one of those role player sets, right? Like you saw us power through a lot of cards.
Yeah.
But I think some niche decks got some really nice upgrades. Like we talked about like Transit Mage or the Stridehangar Automaton or the Brightglass Gearhulk, for example, right? They're not cards that are fundamentally shifting the format by any means. I think this set just has a few selective bangers, and for decks that want certain pieces here, they're going to be really happy that they exist, and other decks are going to be completely unaffected.
Right.
I think we have some interesting commanders in like Loot, Howler, and Hashan, especially. So there's some interesting design spaces. It's definitely not a Modern Horizon set. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure. Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's not rewriting the format, but that's okay. Like I'm fine with that. I like a couple role players here and there, not completely shifting cEDH every 10 minutes. Like that's fine. Like we've got some new decks. There's some fun stuff to, and what I like is there's some fun stuff to explore from this set, right? Like there's a lot of fringe decks got upgrades more so than A tier decks, right?
I mean, honestly, if anything, this set made me more excited to like play green.
Yeah. There's
like,
a lot of
there's just a lot more like green pieces that I'm interested out of the set that I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, even like what we were talking about with like Brightglass Gearhulk, right? Like it's not sexy, but like you're not wrong. The fact that this can go grab multiple pieces for you. That's huge. That's great. I mean, it's just, and again, like, I know I was joking about the whole role player thing earlier, but like, genuinely speaking, I love sets where you come in and you're like, this is going to go in every Rector deck till the end of time, right? This is going to be in every single deck.
Yeah.
But if you're doing this strategy, this is such a get for you, right? And I think those are the type of cards I love getting. You know, they don't flip our format on top of its head. They just improve it. And I love these types of sets, you know. So
hell yeah.
Anyway, with that, if people want to talk about how to brew like a mimeoplasm, right? Leave me the fuck out of that conversation. But if they want to talk to you about that, right?
Hell yeah.
How can they do that, Ian?
Yeah, so if you're interested in finding me, you can find me over at comedianmtg@gmail.com if you're looking to take that next step up in your cEDH gameplay, or if you have a crazy idea and you want to throw some paint at the wall with me, find me over there or in any of the places that Cal is lovely enough to link in the description down below on this video. I have been doing a lot of fun brewing. I actually did. I messaged Cal yesterday. I think I did 6 hashatons within 24 hours. It was a very crazy hashaton filled day, but I think I love brewing new decks in the format, and so anytime anyone wants to come with me with a spicy brew, I am so down. It's not even funny. So if you're interested in taking the next step up or trying to make method out of madness, come find me in any of those places.
I heard if you want to make meth, come see Ian. So
do you want to find out how to make meth? It's me, Walter White.
I guess that makes me Jesse. If you want to support us here on the show, you can go to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors. Next week, we are going to be at MagicCon Chicago, so please come visit us. That would be awesome. We are going to be, I forget what time off the net, like I'll make sure I have a thing in our
post on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. But
we are Sunday. I can't remember the time slot Sunday. I remember we are going to be there on Sunday. So if you're there, it's like later in the afternoon on Sunday. You want to come say hi to us, get something signed. Come see us there at the creator booth on Sunday. So that will be really exciting. I'm excited. Me and Cassie are going. We're going to really enjoy some D&D shit. We're going to play some cEDH with some people. I'm going to with Ian.
We are there from 3 o'clock to 4:30.
That's what I thought it was. We're there. We are in the late. I think we're like the very last
time slot. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're there late in the day on Sunday, come see us. We'd love to say hi. Love to sign your stuff. come hang out. If you want to support us on Patreon, like I said, go do all that stuff. Really appreciate it. And hopefully the Birds win last night, but if the Chiefs win, I will also not be sad because I like Travis Kelce. So anyway, with all that being said, I'm Cal.
I'm Ian.
Stay sculpty, everybody.
Bye.